Hello, Dinat. Thank you very much for this invitation and this chance to share what I call Norio nonsense. Doesn't make sense. So anyway, which is a good thing, I think. But yeah, I never really gave that much thought until recently, and recently, as Ginat knows, and some of you already know, I was diagnosed with something called Merkel cell carcinoma, which is a type of cancer. And even then, it was like no big deal. I didn't think much of it. But there were situations as I'm riding this roller coaster, discovering what it's all about and learning many things. Definitely, there were a couple of times I wasn't so much, but my children were concerned that, like back in July 2021, and more recently, they were concerned that my days were numbered, put it that way. So it's something that's been much more in the forefront of my day-to-day life, and through the course of life, I've gained quite a bit of insight as to question of what does it mean to be human, and when I started life, I would say that the two people, the first person, the number one person that influenced my life, of course, is my mother. She is by far she was my number one teacher, and then the second one I would say is Giorgio Sala, followed by my father, and then of course all of you friends who I've known have all influenced me and been the mirror in which I have gained many insights into the question of what does it mean to be human. And so what I realized is that the question of what does it mean about, the question of death in 2005, it hit me. The question of death is not really about death. The question of death is understanding what it is to be human, understanding what life itself is. And then the question of death just dissolves, because there is no difference between life and death. So when we totally understand what life is, then it answers the questions or anything regarding death. And so I wanted to thank you, Gina. I want to share this with all of you, hopefully in somewhat understandable, somewhat semi-eloquent way, but may not be so. So regarding my mother, the only thing that I've ever heard my mother say about death, which is that death is always present. She said it takes no time at all die. It's always right there. And whereas like if I wanted to go to California, it takes time. There's a space between here, Virginia and California, and there's time that it takes to travel to California. Whereas death it takes no time. It's always right there. And I never, I mean, it was very intriguing what she was saying, and reminded when she said that of back when I was 19, reading Carlos Castaneda's books. That I had at that point three. He had written his third book, Journey to Ixtlan. So, and reminded me of what was stated about death is always on our on our shoulder. Something, I think left shoulder or something like that. It's always there.
Our last speaker today will be speaking about Carlos Castaneda's writings.
Okay, that's great.
Greg Johnson.
Yeah, it's I found it really intriguing, and there's much to glean from his books, and so what I discovered, after 2000, I started driving a truck, actually in 1980, and then I did a number of things besides driving a truck from that point on. But I always loved driving. I love wheels. I've always loved wheels. I mean, as soon as I learned to ride a bicycle, I was riding soon, even 40 miles at the age of 9. Doing overnight trips. Once I became 13, 14, I did a 600-mile ride. So wheels have always been a passion of mine. So that included motorcycles, cars, trucks, buses. I've driven everything. So 2002, I recognized that all the dreams I had for life was never going to happen. So, and it wasn't a negative insight. It was just a realization that all the ideas of success and that I had imagined I would get to. And by the time I was 50, here I am, 48, and realized that it ain't gonna happen. So I said, okay, well, I'm just gonna do what I love. And I went back to driving a truck, and I drove, and so the way I was living was day to day. I was no longer chasing any dreams or anything. I was driving the truck just for the sake of driving the truck itself. That was something that I enjoyed. So the first thing I realized is that the way in which we live is we live chasing some imaginary future. My imaginary future was being successful, $15 million, et cetera. But here I am. The balance in my bank account is no different than it was 20 years before, 25 years before. So anyway, so I realized that I saw it very clearly that we're living for a future, and that future is an illusion. And the other thing that I noticed is when I had stopped living for a future, and once that ended, I never had to make a decision again. And this is since September 2002 is when I saw this. And I realized, having to make decisions is a symptom of chasing an imaginary future. That in every moment, the next step is that right there, in every single moment, and I just take the next step. It's like taking a walk in the forest and following a path. We don't have to think, if we're not caught up in our talking to ourselves, we just follow the path. So it's not that life is predetermined. Life, and I often get this question is that people think, oh, am I a fatalist or something, meaning that life is predetermined, etc. No, it's nothing like that at all. It's just every moment the next step is there. It's not something that I need to think about. And that as we're going through life and relating with each other and insights that we gain as we're going through life, it just reveals pathways, different pathways. It's just we see things in a more expanded way or different ways, and so the next step that shows up, we see it in different ways as we go through life, as we gain insights into the mechanism or the way of moving through life. So the other thing that I noticed is that that as I'm going through life and seeing this world in this way, recognizing, oh, no decisions are necessary. The next step is present in every moment. I was seeing life in a totally different way, and none of this was done intentionally. It was just no longer living for a future the way that the world was showing up was different. There was a difference. And there are things I could see that I had never seen before. And yet when it was seen that it was always that way. It had always been that way. And so one major insight that I saw was that as I was remembering, I was looking at problems, for example, problems with my relationships, problems with money, problems with, the list goes on and on. We all have problems in our life. So I'm looking at my problems, and then all of a sudden it hit me, wait a minute. I had always been looking at problems as my problems, and I was always focused on my problem. And I thought, wait a minute, everybody's got problems. Everyone's got their own problems, right? So I thought, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with having problems. If everyone's got problems, then it's an aspect of being human that we have problems, okay? So having problems is no longer a problem. So, simple things like this. And so as it felt like one piece of baggage, psychological baggage, was then thrown out, dissolved. And as I'm, driving the truck and as the memory of splitting up with my ex came up, I'm looking at that as the memory arises. I could see the memory arising, and then I could feel in my body the sensation of sorrow rising from within and meeting that memory. And so here again, like, because in the past, I would have said that the sorrow was caused by the split up with my ex. But then, because the world was and life was being viewed from not having to do anything because the living for the future had ended. As it was arising, there was no impulse to have to do anything about it. And so I could see that the memory of that came up, and the feeling of sorrow came up through the body and met that memory. And so I saw clearly that, oh, sorrow is not caused by a memory. And it was so clear to me that that there were two different movements that met together. So so the moment I saw that, it was like that memory that's associated with the sorrow just fell away and no longer was attached to sorrow. I could think of my ex and not feel sorrow at all. And so I'm driving. So I was driving east on I-80 across Nevada, and so then the next memory that I had associated with the cause as a cause of sorrow, boom, shows up, and I saw it clearly. That did not cause sorrow. I had attached sorrow to that memory, and that sorrow was stored unconsciously in my body, and it came up and met that memory. So on it, I literally, every single memory I had associated with sorrow started showing up. First slowly, like the way I'm describing, but then faster and faster and faster. And then it was like dominoes of memories falling one after the other. So by the time I got to Salt Lake City, there was no longer any memory associated with sorrow. And I was able to look at sorrow with no memories associated with sorrow. And I saw that the original sorrow was when I was a small child, when I was a toddler. And I saw that too had nothing to do with sorrow. And I saw that the sorrow that I thought was my sorrow was not my sorrow at all. It's human sorrow. I saw that when we as humans are born, one of the things we adopt is sorrow. And there's only one sorrow. And every single one of us that experiences sorrow, that feels sorrow, we are all familiar with sorrow. But it's all the one sorrow. It's the same sorrow. It's human sorrow. And it has nothing to do with any of us individually. So there's nothing that any of us individually can do anything about sorrow, because it has nothing to do with us individually. So it became clear that there's nothing I could do about sorrow. And there was so that with that insight, that was another psychological baggage that just fell away, dissolved, and I could then meet people and see people, and through their eyes I could see human sorrow, this shared human sorrow that we all live. So there was a degree of compassion that arose that had not been there before with that insight. So, and another insight that I got at was I was picking up in Pennsylvania and I was delivering California. And as I was, once the truck was loaded, doing my paperwork, and then I'm imagining my journey to California and arriving at my destination. And then all of a sudden hit me that time is created in thinking. That there is no time. That time is created in actuality. That time is created in the way of thinking. Like living for a future, I had talked about earlier, something that had stopped. So at this point, I gone many months without living for a future, and then all of a sudden, I could see that there was no time, and that what I imagined at that point was life was like an arrow, like I am this arrow, and when it's shot from a bow, the arrow takes flight, and when it leaves the bow, that's birth, and then when the arrow hits the target, that's death. That represented death. This was the image that showed up for me. And what was clear is that I saw that every single one of us hits the bullseye. So as the arrow leaves the bow, then there's a narrator talking to itself, the arrow in flight, and this arrow talking to itself is saying, "Oh, I wonder what it's going to be like tomorrow. I should have done this yesterday. Oh, I was a bad person. I feel bad about this, etc." You know, having this conversation throughout the flight, and in the conversation, we're looking at the world. We're talking as though there's time and cause and effect, etc. And I saw that regardless of any of that chatter, regardless of the way life shows up, we hit the arrow and we hit the bullseye. That we can't do anything wrong. The idea that anything is that we did anything wrong is a fiction. And that time is a fiction as well. So subsequently, I no longer see life as an arrow. I see, I'll talk about that later. I see where the bow, where the arrow, where the top bullseye, where the space. But anyway, I hadn't seen that at that point. So these are the types of insights that were arising, and I was not looking for any of this. It was just arising, and there was a seeing. I was capacity for seeing all of this, and seeing all of these insights. When it was seen, it was always that way, and it was like, oh, okay. So the psychological baggage that I was carrying, when it dissolved the memories associated with, oh, I shouldn't have done this or what. All of that was falling away as well. All the memories associated with the different emotions that I had attributed to that those memories were the cause of these emotional baggage, emotional things that were stored in the body unconsciously. So as I'm driving and continuing to drive here many weeks, I was looking at thinking, and I saw what that thinking is like. The way that I had observed what I thought was thinking was that it's linear, one thought after another. So as I'm driving, different thoughts are arising, are showing up, one thought after another. Then all of a sudden I saw that was false, not linear, and that thinking is more like waves. Waves coming off the ocean. There's the ocean, and then the thinking with the waves crashing on the shore and then receding back into the ocean. And I had always thought that one thought was related to the prior thought, etc., that there was some kind of logical order in the thinking. And I saw that was not so. That every thought was a thought in and of itself, of the ocean coming on, breaking on the shore and going back into the ocean. So I'm just watching this as I'm driving the truck, and I feel like I'm sitting on a beach watching the waves of thinking washing on the shore and receding. And then all of a sudden I saw that there's a space between each thought. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'd never seen that before, and nor had I, and here again, like I'm not looking for any of these things. So then I saw a gap in the gap, the space between each thought, and as the attention was put on the gap the space expanded, and first for 1 second, and for 2 seconds, and slowly just expanded, and so I got to the point. I'm not describing it correctly or accurately. I'm not describing it accurately. It's a challenge to describe, but the space between the thoughts, I saw it was always there, and as the attention went to the space, it just continued to expand to the point where I went 2 weeks without thought, and when there's no thinking, there's a complete shift in how life is seen. And it's not a better shift, but it's just seeing that there's just a complete shift in what life is. And so after 4 days of virtual silence, the immediate thing that was a mind blower is that I could still drive a truck. I could still function in our physical world, regardless. Not only that, I saw I could function so much more harmoniously in the physical world without thinking, without any thinking. That thinking was actually could be an impedance, a lot of times, an impedance to living, and so after the 4th day of this, as I'm driving, I'm watching the world going by through my windshield. I started to see energy, and I started to see that everything was energy. That everything, like, first I noticed the rocks were actually energy, movement of waves, in the same way I saw the thinking as waves. I saw everything, and I looked at my body, and I saw the body was just movement of energy, and yet there was still the ability to be present and function in this apparent physical world. And so I'm just kind of in this blissful space. I'd been in this blissful space for 4 days, and I arrive at the shipper where I'm picking up a load. It was Burgundy Place in California, Montana, California. And as I arrive at the shipper, it all of a sudden hits me that I don't exist. I literally do not exist. And I call it the cosmic joke. And I saw that here I've been living life trying to always taking care of me, trying to improve me, etc., and get better, get richer. The attention of my entire life was on me, and this me is a fiction, doesn't even exist. And I refer to that moment, February 11, 2005, as being hit with a cosmic 2x4. It was like, and I saw, oh my God, all of humanity's problems is that we're living a fiction, that we're identifying with something that is not even real. It's like Santa Claus. It's like going through life believing in this Santa Claus, but the Santa Claus is everything we think we are. And as a child, eventually we learn Santa Claus is a fiction. Well, this me identity, we don't realize, is also as much a fiction as Santa Claus. Everything that we think we are is Santa Claus. Or I prefer to use the image Tweety Bird. I thought a booty cat, and and so we all recognize Tweety Bird, right? We know what Tweety Bird looks like, but we know that Tweety Bird is a cartoon character. Well, one thing that escapes us is that everything we think we are is equally a cartoon character. So the question arose, well, how is it that I and humanity is ever fooled into ever believing that this fiction is what I am? Because it's so obvious that it's not real. And so in response to that question, over the next 10 days, there's so much that was revealed, and I created what I call an onion map, different layers of what we are. And I apologize, I don't have it to share right now. I'm not savvy enough to do a screen share with my files. So, but at our core, I saw that we're infinite, and that we're the same as infinite as unconditional love. Infinite and unconditional love is one and the same. And then from this point of infinite, first differentiation is vibration, what I call vibration, and which then creates light. And then the next layer is what I call resonance. And then the next layer is the healing layer, which is the the first layer where the form manifests, the physical form manifests, the body. And then the next layer is conceptual thinking layer, conceptual languaging layer. And then the next layer out is society. So as we look at these layers, so the resonance layer, the infinite layer, there's no time space. And then there's the vibration layer. I won't go into all these, try to keep it simple. Layer of light and layer of resonance. And the layer of resonance is the first layer where there's time space, but it's all collapsed into one. There's no, it's all happening once, and it's all happening in one space, one place. There's no differentiation. So that's the resonance layer. And then the first layer of form, the feeling layer, is present time, always present time. And then the next layer is our cognitive layer. And the outer two layers of our being is dormant at birth. And then as we learn to speak, that aspect of our brain comes online. So that is that's when we start to speak. So and that is when we begin to think, like, without languaging, before there's speaking, there's no thinking. So once we begin speaking, then simultaneously the toddler begins to think. And then, and that layer is the first layer where there's actually past, present, future. And so past, present, future doesn't exist without language and without thinking. They're linguistic distinctions. And then the outermost layer is society, which is as we relate to others. So what appears to be others, in actuality, it's all one. What was seen is that it's all one energy, actually, which unconditional love, which then breaks into infinite patterns and showing up in different ways, including each of us individually showing up as individual forms. So this was all revealed through no choice. It wasn't like I wasn't looking for any of this. And so I was reminded of some of the things that I heard Jojo Sawa speak of when I was a child. He passed away when I was 11 years old, and he spent every summer with us, he and Lima, his wife. And so one of the one thing he said, which intrigued me more than anything else, was I was about 6 years old, and he said, "You are responsible for everything in the world." And I saw, okay, now I understood what he said. That world out there is not out there. World out there is us speaking and languaging, and then the world out there is showing up in the way in which we're speaking and thinking. The other thing I saw is he referred to something what he called dualistic thinking. And I call it phantom selfing, because the self does not exist. And I recognize what he meant by dualistic thinking. And that is, in thought, the way in which we're conditioned as toddlers is we're given an identity. Like my mother gave me this name, Norio, the name Susan, Bob, whatever. Well, then as a toddler, at first, we don't grasp the idea that we're this separate thing. It doesn't occur to us. We don't think in that way. We don't even think. We just learn it. So it's like the child first holds that identity like a teddy bear. Like here's a teddy bear, and the child takes this teddy bear, and the child is referring to this Norio. This is as something, an object, like a teddy bear. And then, in not too long, it's learned that there's a shift, and they say, "Oh, I'm the teddy bear. I'm Norio." So, and then from that point on, and that's that point on, we're now separate from everything around us. This identity is separate, and that's where the initial sorrow is. Sorrow is the separation from the imaginary separation from everything. So what I saw was that our human existence, our human life is a game, like we're playing a game. So it would be like there's nothing wrong with adopting this separate self-identity. It's not that it's bad or it shouldn't happen. It's natural that occurs. That's our human brain is designed to play in that way. What occurs though is like we want to play a game of Monopoly. What do? We get the game board out, Monopoly. We learn the rules of the game. We pick a game piece. These pewter game pieces, a symbol, a car. I always like the car. I always try to grab the car. Hat, dog, etc. And then we roll the dice, we play the game according to the rules of the game. And the point of all the games is to win, right? So we're playing this competition. So now when the game is over, say, okay, oh, you won, or I won this time, whatever. And then we put the game away. So during the course of the game, we never ever forget that this car, this dog, is a game piece. It's not what we are. Okay. So in life, this character named Noria, character named Gina, is a game piece. So it's not that we're not supposed to have the game piece. It's that we're identifying and we forget that game piece is not what we are. It's just a game piece. So we play this game of life on planet Earth or whatever life, this world is the game board. And to play in this game, we adopted this character. So the child, when the infant, when it's first born, because, let me back up a little. What I recognize is that we don't understand, what language is and what thinking is. And it's not that we need to understand, it's just when we're born, we don't think about, none of that shows up. But it's in relationship, without being in relationship with others, that part of the brain, the outer layers of the onion, the human onion, does not come online until it starts relating with others. So language does not occur except in relationship. It's only in relationship that language begins to occur. And we don't fully understand what language is. The primary function of language is to create our world, is what's creating our world. That is the primary function of language. A secondary function of language is we use that to communicate with each other. But animals and other things, plants, whatever, they communicate with each other and they don't have language. So the primary function of, so language is not, or communication is not the primary function of language. It's a secondary function of language. So, and thinking is languaging within oneself. And so the self-identity does not come online. It's a fragment of language. And language is inherently, without language, we couldn't play as humans. And so when I say up, which is a word, automatically down is created in opposition, in contrast to up. When I say good, then in contrast to good, evil is created. And so I saw that nouns like trees, table, etc., is not the form itself. It points to something like there's a table. It points to an object, an energetic object. So it's like the words are taking energy and freezing it in place. And so the me, I, is also only a linguistic distinction. It's a pronoun. And pronouns only exist in language. So in conversation, as you and I speak, if something occurs, we have memories, we share the memories, we tell a story. Well, in the telling of the story, we speak in terms of I did this, or this happened to me, etc. And so there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it's like we're playing the Monopoly game and we're talking about what's occurring on the Monopoly board, of what happened, etc. So it's a way in which we play, playing with time, space, playing with this game piece. So it's not that we shouldn't be doing it. The mischief happens is because we think that is what we really are. There's a forgetting that that's just a temporary game piece. So as a result of identifying with this game piece and not questioning, going through our life, like I continually trying to improve it. I walk into Barnes and Nobles. I enjoy reading, so walk into Barnes and Noble bookstore. First place I go is to the self-help section. I want to try to fix myself. I want to get better at relationship. I pick up books like Stephen Covey so I could be successful. And on different areas of my life, and books on, sexual books on becoming a better lover, whatever, trying to improve myself. It's me, and recognizing that it's all a fiction. I still enjoy going into Barnes and Noble, but I haven't stepped foot in the self-help section ever since 2005. Because there is no self that can improve. We're already an expressions of the infinite self. What's there to do? So, so the, so like, so the symptoms uh, of 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 mistaking this game piece for what we really are is we go through life looking at life through cause and effect, trying to manage our life. Well, one, as I said in the beginning, is living for a future, which there is no future. It's only part that only exists as an aspect of language. So it only exists in language. So we're living for a future. So we're looking at life, breaking life up into separate events, cause and effect. And so we're trying. So the question we ask is why. Like, so as the child is learning to play in this game, there's a period that children seem to ask why all the time. So that's where the child is exercising, playing in cause and effect. We look at, and then time appears as linear time. So the reality in which we're creating, I call linear time-based reality. We don't recognize that in the way in which we're languaging, we can create a reality which is not based on linear time. But and we don't have too much time to get into what occurs in relationships, space of creation, and all that. But we'll save that for another time. So anyway, so another thing that exists in our ignorance and identifying with this separate game piece is fear. When because we're identifying with this separate game piece, which is now separate from everything else that's showing up, there's an inherent fear in our existence because we're now identifying with this fragment, which is in opposition, antagonistic to other forms. So there's an inherent sense of vulnerability, and so there's an inherent sense of fear, and we're living, managing this fear. So, and because we're managing this fear, we're thinking about the future, thinking about, protect, et cetera, et cetera. It all builds upon itself. Problems, as I said, is part of identifying with a separate self as real. Beliefs is, what are beliefs? Beliefs is an attachment to an idea. Because we're attempting to protect ourselves, we have attachments to physical form, and the strongest attachment we have is attachment to an idea. So the attachment to an idea is beliefs. Boredom is a symptom of identifying, not recognizing what we are. Without thinking, there's no such thing as boredom. Without thinking, there's no such thing as fear. Problems, without thinking, there's no such thing as problems. So, and it's not that there's anything wrong with thinking. It's the way in which we're thinking as though there's a separate self. And that's what George Osala was referring to when he said dualistic thinking. In the thinking, there's created this me, which is then in opposition to what it's not. And thinking that me is real, that is what he's referring to as dualistic thinking. So I've been thrown into the world of spirituality. I was never interested in spirituality prior to any of this, but there's a strong impulse to want to share these insights with others. And I started learning a lot of spiritual lingo. One of the things I learned was dualism. Well, it's not dualism, it's dualistic thinking. But we play in the duality, which is created in language. Nothing wrong with that. Without that, we couldn't play human. But The mischief is in the thinking dualistically, that there's some separate me. So this is just an introduction to the insights that I've gained. And so upon seeing this, it became clear there's no birth, that birth and death is part of that. Part of it is an aspect of playing the game, of being human, but in actuality, there is no birth and there is no death. So it became obvious that when we die, what we call death, we don't go anywhere because there's nowhere to go. That's just in thinking here in humans, as we play human. So when the form dies, the languaging and the thinking dies. And so we don't go anywhere because we're not the thoughts. So in this recognition, as I said, our effort, our desire to want to know what death is based on fear, managing our fear. And when the fear falls away, there's no longer a need to manage life. So the arguing with life disappears. Whatever's arising, there's no idea, sense or concept that there's anything wrong. So in August 2021, I was diagnosed with Merkel cell carcinoma. Mr. Bump, I had this growth growing, affectionately called it Mr. Bump. I was diagnosed with Merkel cell carcinoma. It doesn't occur to me that it shouldn't be there. The idea that there's something wrong with it. And yes, in the moment, next step shows up and, I'm functioning. So I can tell you the story. Well, I did this and I did this, I did this. But in fact, that's a story that's describing that we're playing. It's like I'm telling you on the Monopoly board what's happening, what happened. So we as humans are here to play, and we don't recognize that the world in which we find ourselves is ongoingly being created in our languaging. And as we're living this life, creating this life, we then complain about it and argue with it. So anyway, let's see, it's 9:30. So I enjoy and appreciate speaking of sharing these insights with all of you. And here again, please don't take my word for any of this. I'm inviting you to consider all of what I'm sharing, but don't believe any word I say. It's not what I'm sharing is not another method or another way or anything like that. It's a story of Norio, and what I'm speaking is Norio nonsense. We all have our own stories to share with each other. So instead of rambling on with more nonsense, I'd like to open this up to questions. And I'm not so good at reading the chats.
I'll take care of that. Don't worry.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you'd be willing to read any questions in the chats.
Well, let me ask you my question. 1 second. I wonder if you are enjoying this experience in a physical body, and if you want to continue it, or if you'll be sorry to transition to non-physical.
Well, there's actually no desire to continue anything because there's no idea of. I mean, I play living for a future. Yeah, like when it was first diagnosed, I had Merkel cell carcinoma. That was when I stopped driving the truck. I still own the truck now, but I have a friend driving the truck. But initially, I had the truck sat idle for 9 months because I thought, well, 2 months I'll be back on the road. And 2 months later, I thought I'd be back on the road. So, and after 9 months, I recognized I was not going to be back on the road. So now I have a friend driving the truck. So I still, it's not that. So I still play with regard to futures, but when it comes to the wanting to live, the universe, the way the universe expresses itself there's an inherent impulse to want to continue. And that's part of the, raising family, having children, etc. That's the universe's expression of wanting to continue. So that expression of continuation, so to speak, ongoing, is still present within the Norio form. However, there's no thought that it's not like a desire that death is an ending. And I want to avoid that ending. I want to prolong this human existence. So the other thing about this, which I want to share with everyone, is that with the recognition of these insights and with the recognition that the eye is only a game piece that is being used to play human. When we're identifying with this game piece as what we think we are, not questioning that, like I said, the symptoms of that are fear, beliefs, etc. What is primary to this me identity is being right, because this identity wants to continue, and we want to have the right information to protect ourselves from what's out there. So when someone approaches you with a different idea, different information, whether it be in the form of nationality, whether it be in the form of race, whether it be in the form of religion, then they are potential threats. They become a potential threat. Because it's threatening this, what I'm attached to as what I am. So in this recognition, not knowing becomes the way of going through life. No longer attached to ideas, beliefs, etc. So when I say that there's what I describe about death, I'm not saying I know what it is or what it's going to be like. There's just absolutely no fear, and there's a recognition that we don't go anywhere. So I apologize to all of those of you who think that I had some kind of insight into that.
Is it something you look forward to?
No, not at all. Like when I'm talking to the driver, like I talk regularly with the driver of the truck, and the way the driver thinks is, well, I'm concerned about, like there's a storm up ahead, a snowstorm in Oregon, and I don't know if I'm going to have to chain up, whatever. I mean, these are concerns, chain the tires up so that I can go through the snow, because if you don't, then you could get a fine, etc. But anyway, and I would remind the driver, well, you don't have to think about it until you get there. And none of that happened. So there was no need to be concerned whether you're going to chain up or not, or I'm going to hit this storm, I'm going to hit traffic, whatever. I mean, I love driving, and nobody ever is in my way when I drive. Because if in the past, someone could cut me off, and now nobody ever cuts me off. It never shows up that way when I drive. It's like a dance, and I see that if someone cuts me off, it's only because I'm not paying attention. It's not that they're really cutting me off. So anyway, so regardless of traffic, regardless of, I'm just as relaxed in whatever when I'm driving. So yeah, so to make a short answer long, death is ever present, but it's not I'm no longer separate life and death. There's no longer this separation. So there's no longer the idea that going to happen in the future. If you can understand what I'm saying.
That's nice.
I love life. I have 6 beautiful children. They've been so wonderful. And all my wonderful friends like Yuki-Nat. It's something I treasure. Thank you.
Norio, I saw your mother right towards the end. She was in a wheelchair, and there was a conference in Philadelphia with your father, also with Christina Perillo, who taught chocolate, and that was like heresy. And who was it? Yogan and somebody else lifted the wheelchair onto the dais, onto the platform. And then your mother, I can't remember if she spoke, she radiated. It was amazing to me that someone in such a frail physical condition could have such incredible energy. And I've always remembered that. So I wanted the opportunity to share that with you.
But thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing
that. We have a few questions. Does anyone want to speak out verbally and ask questions? I could read through these and see, Norio, if there's anyone that maybe stands out for you. Does Norio have any formal meditation training? Do you suppose that perhaps the reason we can't remember much from being a baby or toddler is that we had no language and therefore no thought? I read your mother's book. She said heaven is all around us. I'll just read through these, if that's okay.
Okay. May I interrupt and just
go ahead.
ask? I'll forget all of those.
Yeah, of course.
So, we have no memory prior to a certain age because there isn't a me to remember. So prior to a certain age. Now that doesn't, what's interesting is when there's no longer an identifying with the me, we actually have memories. The attention, where I told you about the onion, the attention can move into the deeper layers of the onion and into the infinite. And that's when I said the following 10 days after I saw there was no me, the attention was able to move into the inner layers of our being, which is at our core is infinite. And so when the attention moves into the layer of resonance, which is where it's non-local, no time, or the time space is one. Then we tap into the memory, not just of our own individual from birth, but we tap into the memory of humanity. And so it was seen that the phantom selfing occurred, the way of thinking, which creates the what George Osao calls dualistic thinking, what I call phantom selfing, came online about 12,000 years ago. Prior to that, the way in which we're speaking and thinking was not dualistic. There was aspects of memories of the form Norio prior to being born. Then after birth, I have many memories. Before the languaging occurred. So I remember the first moment I crawled, for example. And living in New York City, I was the first place we lived. I was almost 4 years old when we moved, and so those first 3 years, I got many memories: sleeping, waking up, in the crib, etc. So it's not that the memories aren't there; it's just it's not associated because there is no separate me. There is no when the attention is in the conceptual layer, which is where most of our attention is throughout our life. There is no conceptual memory of prior to when we were a small child.
Do you have a vision of how? Do you have a vision of how you would like the end of the life to look like?
Actually, I have no preference of anything. What is what is. So like these Mr. Bump showing up in my life, I didn't have any preference that it wasn't supposed to be there or anything like that. So and here again, it's there isn't a thought that there's an end of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, once I get there, maybe I could talk to you. I'll tell you maybe something different.
I read your mother's book. She said heaven is all around us. We can get into it a second when we pass. Is that another form of what she told you?
Yes.
Yes.
And my mother, as I mentioned in the beginning, she was my first.
Something happened to the sound, at least for me. I'm not hearing you.
Oh, okay.
You go ahead. I think it's on my end. Go ahead.
Okay, so my mother, as I mentioned, was my first teacher. Although teacher is a misnomer, but it suffices. So the first thing she told me is trust my feelings, not my intellect. She told me that when I was about 5 years old. And then her reference to death was something else she shared with me. And there are many other things that she pointed out to me. Another one she pointed out to me was I was upset and angry about something. This was now in my late teens. And I used the word hate. And I said, I hate this, whatever. And she gently said that she never felt hate. She never used that word. And I paused. It gave me pause, and I realized, when I use that word, I feel it. I realized, I don't have to ever used the word hate, and I'll never feel it. So I've never used the word, and I don't feel it. Since then, I have never felt hate. So, and that's an example of what I'm sharing regarding the way in which we're languaging. Yeah, so there's many general examples of, and the way she would share these things with me is in the way that Ginach said. She wasn't telling me, you must do this. She just would point something out, and I would, oh, awesome, look at it. And so heaven on earth is clearly, I see that in the way in which the recognition, clearly I see that heaven and hell is just a linguistic construct. And it only exists while we're here as humans on this planet Earth. And we're living as though this world is either heaven or earth. Yeah. Hope that's helpful, useful.
That experience of seeing your mother, for me, changed my definition or idea of what health is. That she could be in such a frail condition and radiating whatever health is, whatever we call it. That might have been Lisa.
Yes.
I don't think she's ready for camera time. Any other questions? If not, we'll thank you, and thank you again.
Yeah, if you have 2 seconds, I just like to find out, Norio, that was a wonderful presentation, and we had the chance to see you, in your interview with Thea, and that really prepared us for today. That was really top notch. So the only question that I've got is, did you have any formal training in meditation to undertake all of this that you've been doing since your first linguistic steps on the planet, being instructed by George and giving you a huge meditation there on your responsibility for everything that happens in the universe, and so did you receive any formal instruction whatsoever on how to meditate?
Yeah, that's a good question. My dad used to teach meditation, and after one of his teaching his meditation, when I was 10 years old, I thought, I'll give it a try. So I sat for about 10 minutes on the couch and sat quietly sitting there. After 10 minutes, I said, oh, this is enough. I want to go out and play. That was my 10 minutes of formal meditation, formal education meditation.
That's beautiful.
And as you pointed out, though, I didn't realize that I was living meditation.
Yeah.
Like there are a number of things Jojo Sao said which I did not understand at all as a child, but I would continually look at that question as I went through life. In different circumstances, you're responsible for, boom, whatever's happening. I would ask, how am I responsible for this? Yeah. And continue, throughout my life, many of those things, and that's where I point out that Jojo Sao was my second teacher.
Yeah,
because of those things that he had said that I'd repeatedly come back to and ask, look at, and then driving the truck, I didn't recognize it. I didn't consider meditation, but I saw that it's no different. It is meditation. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So no formal meditation.
Oh no, the 10 minutes, the 10 minutes exactly, exactly qualifies as that. Maria's got a question also.
I would like to tell you, Norio, that I am looking at the road from a very different speed and way. I am not on wheels. I am very much walking, or the road, the road. And coming from a small village, I had 3 of my cousins, very close family relatives, young men at their 20s, 25s, 30s, who passed on the road because the village life was very slow. They were not able to react. And not only them, but from this neighborhood, by the 20s, they all got the very short life because of the road. And when we heard about you loving the driving, and I am convinced that it had the physical effect on you. It is not possible 11 hours driving without asking too much. And when I heard that, I said to Michael that Norio was doing tapas actually on wheels.
Tapas is the Indian term for a long-term meditation, which is what you just described.
When the holy man is out in nature and for years or a very long time, having a sitting meditation in nature. But knowing that you had to stop at the gas station, knowing that if you had to calm down, you still had a little bit of gasoline to inhale, and so forth, we understood that you had a tremendous physical strength to do what you did so far. And somehow it seems that we are the beneficial of your today's condition, that you are sharing your experiences with us, because being in a vehicle, no matter which way we see it, it is a solitude. And Herman Eihar, our teacher, he used to say that when you are in a vehicle, you are in a different magnetic field. You are closing yourself out of natural magnetic of the earth. And so yes. I see you as you were actually rolling above our human experience until now, when we are beneficial because you are sharing those wonderful things with us. And we are extremely grateful for it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you too. Thank you very much. And that's exactly how I see, it's not, I don't have to choose what the next step is. This is the next step. It's fine. As much as I love driving, what I like is secondary. I appreciate it, whatever is showing up. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm going to conclude.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Norio. I'm going to conclude with a statement here by Tim. Once your father said that we should never use the word certainly or certainty because we're ignorant and shouldn't feel certain about anything. So
yes. Yeah. May I say something about that? Or?
Please. Yeah.
So when there's no longer the identifying with this game piece, the need to be right falls away. And so as that expression indicates, we're open to anything. When we're identifying the game piece, we don't have the capacity to even understand what's true. Because the game piece in and of itself is a false identity. So our capacity for seeing what's true and what's false is corrupted. So what becomes guiding is truth, whatever is true. So we never know. We recognize that we don't know. It's in the moment, whatever truth is. And so we're open to anyone or anything that's arising, and whatever anyone has to offer. we have ears to listen to all of it and not be threatened. Nothing is threatening. And yeah, and then we follow our, like my mother said, follow our feelings, and life is unfolding beautifully. Thank you, Gina.
So I don't wish you anything, Norio, because I think you have everything. I just want to,
Yeah, as we all do, yes.
yes. Thank you so much, Norio. Thank you
Yeah,
very
thank
much.
you, Gina.
I do wish you, from a selfish point of view, a long life.
Well, and likewise for me too, for all of you, for you. And yeah, and love to your late husband too.
Thank you.
Wonderful man.